Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be different, it's going to be fun. This is going to be a story about Anduin the Beardy, and I want to start off with saying he's still alive, he's good, better than he was, but he is a, let's see, leatherback hypotransdunner, very special morph, black eyes, his scales are a little bit different. One thing that we're learning though is the morphs can sometimes have a hard time with their health. You know, it's a specialty breeding process to get those, and we don't really have new genes here in the US since, gosh, was it the 90s? I don't know, it's been a long time since we've had new dragons imported into this country, so, you know, it's interesting. They're very pretty, but just beware that you might end up with some pretty extreme vet bills at some point. Or maybe a shorter lifespan. Normal dragons can live around 20 years old, so just interesting. So he's only a year and a half or so, maybe 2 years now. So I'm going to take you through his story. So we'll start off at the top. Now his owner, good friend of mine, she sent me all these notes and I kind of organized them so I could tell his story. So she started off with him being undersized for his age. 8 months old, he was the size and weight of a 3-month-old healthy dragon. So that says maybe he was a runt. He's too cute for that to matter. You know, you'd still want to get him. So she did. Hypotrans leatherback dunner. It's just interesting. So if you want to check him out, this is his Instagram page. Anduin the Beardy. So we'll start off, let's see, October 2020, if you can think back that far. I have a hard time. At this point, it's all one big blur. She took him to a vet. The closest vet she could find there in Oklahoma was an hour and a half away. So all these vet visits, just imagine 3-hour road trip, you know, to go to a vet. So we have, he was lethargic. Didn't seem to be doing well, he wasn't growing, so she took him in. They did a fecal test. He had coccidia and pinworms, so they gave him Albon for the coccidia, Panicure for the pinworms. A fecal is probably the cheapest thing you could do for a dragon, and it's good to do, you know, maybe once or twice a year, because they can get parasites from lots of places, you know. Even the produce we buy at the store, I mean, we wash it off, but there can be little eggs on there. You know, we can't hardly prevent all this stuff we can't see, but we can keep their tank clean with like the ammonia-based cleaners or the chlorhexidine, which is food safe. I use that more often, and I do spot cleaning as we go. So it's good to do that fecal. It's like $30-40, and then if they see anything, they can treat it. So that this particular vet used Albon for coccidia, Panicure for pinworms. So she did that, and then, let's see, 2 months later took him back, thought maybe he might have upper respiratory infection. So breathing through the mouth, very lethargic, you know, she's just confused, like what in the world is wrong? So another fecal exam, still had coccidia, and they only saw one singular pinworm, so that was a big improvement. So Albon again, another round of that. Panicure again. If you're in another country, that's fenbendazole. It's sold under different names, and there's dosages for all kinds of animals, even farm animals. So that's easy to find. You don't necessarily have to go to a vet. So for that one little pinworm egg, they just did that again. Why not? That's a fairly safe medication. Then they gave 4 TAZ injections for that possible URI. The reason we say possible here, they did not do a throat swab and send that off to a lab to see, okay, what bacteria is even in there, or is that even the problem? Most vets aren't going to have that capability, and they have whatever medication they've had good experience with, they're probably going to give you. So in her case, it was the 4 TAZ. Okay, so a month later, took him back, did a blood test, rechecked the fecal, traces of parasites, but it was low enough they didn't do treatment. So when they say traces of parasites, that's maybe not another pinworm egg, but low levels of coccidia. So I'm going to show you this blood test. So let's go up here. All right, so this was in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Hematology. This is what some of the blood tests can look like. You get that graph, and you know, for animals or people, you know, if you're in this range, you're good. If the level's too high, you're over here. Level's too low, you're over here. So I looked these up. These are aspects of the blood that aren't too terribly interesting. It seemed like, okay, if they stain, we're going to see that. It's just, vets would understand the nuance. Since there wasn't much wrong, they didn't pay a whole lot of attention to that. They did notice his glucose was high. They said that could be stress, so don't worry about that too much. Everything else looked fairly good. They said, no, he's a little dehydrated. See, we got the low potassium there. That's one of the electrolytes that keeps us hydrated. And overall, this is a good-looking blood work. There's just not much going on. So that was the end of that. But that's what that can look like. If you get blood work, that's a little more expensive than the fecal, but it's not going to break the bank. They saw here remarks, no parasites, no significant toxicity, nothing abnormal. This is pretty good. This is really good. So go back to the notes over here. 1 month later, went back, URI again 4 TAS injections. He just wasn't improving. And at this point, look at this right here. If you weigh your dragon, 13 months old, if you've weighed your dragon, I bet they've been more than 263 grams. That's really low. So obviously something was up. So that's why she kept going back. But look at all these trips. I mean, you can't say she wasn't trying. Month later, check fecal again. Coccidia was back. He was lethargic. This time they gave SMZ syrup. So that's common for coccidia. From what I'm learning from other dragon owners, that's common. What I've read online. After all of that, he developed watery eyes. Now when I say watery eyes, let me go over here to his eye picture. She did a really good job trying to take pictures of his eyes when they were watering. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to take a picture of an animal that's so tiny and get it to come out the way you want. But look right here. Can you see that line? That's how far up the watering was. He couldn't see. That's going to affect your vision right there. So something was up. It makes you think, okay, there's an infection somewhere. Let's treat it. Let's see what's up. But they gave him some eye drops. Ciprofloxacin. Ophthalmic eye drops. That's a mouthful. Didn't help. He had coccidia, but it was low enough they didn't treat him again. A few months later, another fecal. Still had coccidia, no treatment. October of this past year, she took him again for the URI coccidia. Again, Albon for coccidia, 4 TAS for the URI. Again, there's one thing that we did find out. I had to get really creative in the searches. But I typed in every single medication. I thought, I wonder if one of the medications caused it. Albon in dogs was seen to cause dry eyes, and that's going to make your eyes water. So it made me wonder, okay, is that going to cause it in a dragon? I think it could. It's possible, but it's hard to know. Rose had watering eyes as well. And every day I'd go with distilled water and a Q-tip, and I'd soak her eyes a little bit, and then I'd try to roll it, just gently get that goo off her eyes. But there were bits in it. And the first time I took her to the vet, they gave her doxycycline because she had a lot of signs of that URI, that upper respiratory infection. And with that doxycycline, her eyes cleared up. I thought, why won't they just listen to another dragon? Why would a vet listen to us? It's like they see way more dragons than we do. But this was October, and something interesting happened. After this appointment, I took Rose to my vet in November, and I was talking to her about this. And I explained, I've got a friend in Oklahoma, she's dealing with this stuff. I said, really, you all will send off a throat swab to a lab and tell what bacteria is in there, for one, and you figure out like what antibiotic is best for that. It's very effective. Her vet doesn't do that. Could she do a swab at home and send it to the lab that you send them to? She said, no, you got to be the right level of herpetology vet, exotic vet or something, and they have accounts, with that lab in order to send off the swab and really tell, instead of doing the blanket treatment for, with the Fortaz or something, they can really hone in on what's up. So she said, if your friend's in Oklahoma, tell her to try Oklahoma State University's herpetology department. They have a clinic, and they might be able to do everything that she needs done for her dragon. So here we go. New vet was located. So I'm going to check this out over here. So this is the discharge letter, Oklahoma State University. Very professional. So I'm just going to sum up what this says. This is on your screen too. Feel free to pause it and read if you want. They pointed out, he's generally healthy. He was brought in for tearing of the eyes, and he was also lethargic. Had a history of coccidia. So down here, showed signs of dehydration. This was written after they did their blood work. They couldn't visualize tearing of the eyes when eating. They always try to replicate it. They never can. That's always how it does. They did their blood work. Saw the dehydration a little bit still. Fecal was sent off. That's still pending. They took an eye culture. And that was if needed. But at this point in time, his eyes are still watering. So I'm sure she's going to contact the vet again and say, hey, you took an eye culture. Can we look at that, see what's up? See if we can treat that a little bit better. They recommended syringe feeding some water, more baths in order to improve hydration. Bath time really only improves hydration if they're going to drink it. Beardy vet in Australia, they did a cool video. They put a dragon in water for 30 minutes that did an x-ray to see, did she take any of that up her vent or anything, absorb any through her skin? No, exactly the same. Still good for them. Still very good for them. But unless they're going to drink that water, which a lot of them do, they're not going to just soak it up. So if you want to put the electrolyte bath water stuff in their form, that's only really if they drink it. So this clinic, let's see here. This is what their blood work looks like when they're done. They don't give you the little graphs, but they did highlight the protein, albumin was high, globulin was a little bit low, but everything else was still pretty good, right? So he's only got a little bit of, it's not way off. She's taking good care of him. He eats well, she feeds him well. The blood work can really tell you a lot. So what they recommended, no change in diet, no change in husbandry yet. Monitor him for decreased appetite, lethargy, difficulty breathing, squinting of the eyes. Check back in 2 weeks. So she went back in 2 weeks. This time it was a little bit different. Once they got finished with everything, they got a lot of stuff right here. They had recommended CT scan. Now, my vet can do an x-ray. Of course, it's expensive. It's an exotic x-ray, whatever. They can do ultrasound. They never mentioned CT scan, so this is fascinating. So this second time, by the end of it, you know, they had 4 things. He had some issues on his tail with his scales. They say over-conditioned. I'm going to explain that in a minute. Chronic parasites, tearing of the eyes. What just happened? Okay. Oh, I'm so used to clicking that instead of my arrow keys. Okay. So this one, they talk about the eyes, low levels of coccidia, didn't require treatment at that time. They did another treatment. They sent home that medication after the first vet visit. They sent this right here. So when she went back, they did another fecal. I'm so sorry. This is my first time using this recording software, so I tried to put everything in an easy way to go from one thing to another. But see this little, see the hourglass? It's not the same as a cursor. Okay. They couldn't find anything wrong through that CT scan with his glands, his salivary glands, his eustachian tube, or any other structures in the face. They did see a lot of, you see that word? That's basically internal fat. Now I can't speak on that. I'm not a doctor, but it appears to be compressing his lungs, causing the open mouth breathing. So without further ado, I'm going to show you the CT scan. It's so cool. So this is what a CT scan looks like. You see there's this little hip bones down here. Look at all that. That's the ribs. So this is interesting. So through that they could tell there's fat pressing on the lungs. They could check out all of his face up here. Nothing looked abnormal. So these are real experts. This is the real deal. That's why they went for the CT scan. They can see a lot more on a CT scan than with an X-ray or an ultrasound. So I think this is really cool. Let's go back over. What did they recommend? They didn't send any medications that time. Let's see. The submitted fecal sample showed an increase in isospora, medium count of cysts, and a low number of tapeworms. No medications at that time. Animals can have parasites. If it's such a tiny level, vets don't want to overtreat. And they probably looked at him and said, he has had a lot of medication in his short life. So they're trying to be careful not to do any harm, which is what they're supposed to do. So they advised her to continue through a syringe, increase his bath frequency to 10 minutes daily, increase his exercise. So this is interesting. You know, when we're feeding these dragons, we have these guidelines of how many bugs, how many vegetables, what percentage of their diet is each, but he's stunted and he's a morph. So are those guidelines going to be the same? Apparently not, but through the CT scan they were able to say, hey, let's cut back on the bugs, get him moving. Because down here they gave dietary advice. Only greens, you know, vegetables, of course. I mean, you're going to give them other stuff than just greens. Insects have a lot of protein, but they do have a lot of fat. So there's a lot of dragon owners that go like almost completely vegetarian once they're an adult. And sometimes it's for medical reasons, sometimes it's because their liver is worn out because they had too many. It's good to get them checked. If they're not acting right or they're breathing with their mouth open, it's good to get them checked, you know. And if you're not happy with the vet you have, keep looking. You know, keep looking. Okay, they said no change in husbandry, but I'm going to show you what she did. So they still say monitor for appetite, difficulty breathing, lethargy, squinting of the eyes. Then the tip of his tail broke off. Poor Anduin. So he ended up, he had like tail rot at the very tip. And it happened to come off when he was at the vet because, you know, they're picking around, they're checking everything out. So, I mean, what better time to have that happen. So they advised her, look, check out for inflammation and infection. Okay, so let's see what else they say. Okay, 2 months, come back. So I'm sure she's got a lot of questions after 2 months. You know, they're going to call with results of the fungal culture of his tail, because they did that as well. It was up here. So the tail was really not life or death, so that wasn't brought up at first. So what I'm going to show you, she got one of these. I think it's the same one. And set it up, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you these videos. It's so hilarious. Let's see, downloads. Okay, this is his tank. This is before. You know, she had the vinyl flooring. This, I believe, is Zen Habitats. So that's him before. You know, you would think, oh, he's not going to run through that. He's not going to run through his poo and then run through that. Of course he's not doing that. Well, she found out that he was. He did it, I think she saw it 4 or 5 separate times that he did that, and then painted it everywhere. And you know, when they do that, you can't always see it all. I mean, you're not always going to see brown smeared on this and this and this, you know. So let me show you what she did later. This is funny. I'll show you this so you get a laugh and see what she did. She sterilized like crazy, but he loves to knock those hygrometers down. So he's looking at her. He looked back at her. She was across the room taking a nap on the couch. He looked back at her and then knocked that down. And apparently before this, he ran through his poo and then ran through his food. So, mystery solved on coccidia. But see what he did there? Knock that down. He likes knocking his stuff down. Now, when I show you the next part, he did that, and then he looked over at her. It's like, you gonna wake up? Mom. Huh? You gonna wake up? You gonna wake up? Wake up, Mom. I made a bunch of noise. And it's funny, because she said that she watched these. She finally ended up waking up, because there's so much racket. He went over and knocked this one down, too. This other one down. Okay, but the main point, she sterilized everything. She used a steam cleaner. You know, that can help kill those eggs. Coccidia is a lot like fleas. There's a life cycle, and you have to kind of keep treating and stay ahead of it. But the eggs will attach to things. It's really hard to get them off. And then you'll think you're past coccidia, and then those eggs will hatch. And then you're overrun again, and you can't see them. At least with fleas, you can see it. If you've ever had a flea infestation, oh my gosh, it's the same thing. You think you beat it, and then 6 months later, your house is overrun. You gotta leave. You gotta do smoke bombs, and so it's crazy. And then steam cleaning the carpet can help. But coccidia is one of those things where your animals will track it in on their paws. Cats and dogs, and on our shoes if we walk out. Where birds have pooped, you know, in the yard. It's pretty much everywhere. So you're tracking it in, and then if your dragon goes and walks around on the floor, you know, they use their tongue to test everything out. So they're licking, they can get it that way. They can get it from live feeders. You know, it really depends. They can get all kinds of parasites that way. So it's hard to stay ahead of it. So I don't fault anyone. You know, we try really hard. We mix the solutions. We do what we're supposed to do. But I'll tell you, if you're one that has to go to work all day, maybe check out one of these cameras so you can see what are they really doing. And I think it's a motion detected. Like, it's not going to give you 24 hours of video. But then you can see what are they doing to harm themselves, because they do. There's a lot of animals that do. You know, they don't know any better. But right now he's doing a lot better than he was. He still has the eye-watering. But that's his story so far. And I really hope something in this video can help you guys out. If you've got questions, or if your dragon had the same thing and you found a solution, put it in the comments, or, you know, go over here and follow him on Instagram. I'll put that link in the video description. sometimes it's tough. I don't even want to know what all she spent on the vet bills. Oh my gosh. But thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, you're amazing. Hopefully this helped out. I'll go back over to the notes. If you got any questions, leave a comment. Please subscribe, like the video, and talk at you later.